And now, as it happens, we are going to meet some of the areas of innovation clusters with some cluster leaders and academic experts from Sweden. And to manage this discussion, we have Mr. André Domin, who is the director of Heidelberg Technologiepark and also the European president for IASP. Please welcome him up on stage.
Moving not only me up, but all of you. And we were listening to the minister and to his view on emergent technologies and his optimism. And I guess it's partly due to his only 3 months in his job, because usually you don't see a minister that optimistic and lively on stage, at least in Germany. So I was really impressed to see that, and also impressed to hear about his personal vita when he came from a rural area to paradise Sweden, and obviously was able to climb the stairs into politics. I would like to ask my colleagues, or better, my guests on stage, because I would like to do as Luis did with his panel discussion, to ask anybody who is on stage with me, and I see at least one, and there's another one, Tsion. Obviously I had to Google whether you are female or male, because I didn't see you, and I didn't know that name. And Catarina, we had contact before, and yeah, okay. So I would like to ask everybody to introduce yourself very briefly, maybe what your background is, what you did before doing what you do now, and then what your cluster is dealing with, and then we will start the open discussion. So would you please start?
Okay. I'm Anders Carlsson, the operative manager of Visual Sweden. It's a cluster on visualization and image analysis. Hello? Okay, it's working. My background is that I'm an engineer. I've been working some 10 years in the Swedish industry, in the company ABB, actually. We met here today. And I have also been working with innovation support and tech transfer in the university here. A little bit more about Visual Sweden, maybe. It's very well anchored in the research that we have here in this region when it comes to visualization and image analysis. In its business core, we have more than 60 companies. In fact, all companies that gave pitches here before lunch are Visual Sweden companies. And also, of course, the Datatone, which house we borrow here today. Major stakeholders are some large companies, again, companies like Siemens and Saab, also ABB to some extent, but also of public entities, authorities and institutes that luckily have their headquarters in this region, like the Swedish Weather Service, the Air Traffic Administration, but also the National Forensic Laboratory of the Swedish Police. All have great demands in the area of visualization and image analysis. This effort has been made possible thanks to long-term funding from Vinnova and the regional administration and the municipalities in the region. We support and stimulate innovation in different ways. We have some money that we can put into projects, but we can also support by making connections between people and a lot of other things.
Thank you very much.
It's a technology, you know, and I'm working with automation and technology, so it's a test for me. Okay, and the automation region, we are an innovation platform with about 130 companies. It's a big company like ABB and Siemens and so on, but also high technology startups in the cluster. And it's all around the automation and digitalization area, of course, and it's very active partners in the cluster. And we do a lot of collaboration, of course, with the incubators and science parks. Automation Region, we do not ever do anything by ourselves. We are a broker. We collaborate with the industry, and we do participate some kind of broker event, and we do a lot of matchmaking for the industry because we have heard it all day. Collaboration, we do need a lot of platform for collaboration. And we do that all around Sweden, actually. So that's short about Automation Region. We're also founded by Vinnova, and we are a part of Mälardalen University, about 2 hours away from here.
And when did it start?
The cluster. We started 12 years ago, so we have a lot of years that we have actually built up the way we do work today. But we have funding from Vinnova, as Anders told you about the Vinvex initiative from 2016. So the same year.
Thank you.
And you started, yeah. So we are a little bit older, but I can still see quite good and hear. Okay, pass forward.
Yeah, my name is Tsion Woldermariam, and I'm part of the project management for IoT World, which is a regional cluster where we're focusing on accelerating the use of IoT for societal improvements. And today we have 17 project partners or project members, and these are from research, it's from public agencies, but also companies within the region. And we arrange networking and have events to kind of spread the knowledge about IoT, but also have opportunities for these companies and different partners to meet and initiate projects together. We also have, it's also one of the regional strength areas, so we, together with Tillväxtverket, are part of the S3 pilot, where the management has been certified as, we have a bronze label certification. And also participated at the Hanover Fair to do some matchmaking internationally.
And who finances you? And when did it start?
The smaller project is financed by Vinnova, but we're extending the cluster, so we also have one project that's financed by Tillväxtverket. So the cluster is more trying to create activities that are financed by different agencies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, yeah, so good afternoon. My name is Fredrik Heintz. I'm an associate professor of computer science here at Linköping University, where I do research on artificial intelligence, and especially artificial intelligence applied to autonomous systems. So we had fully autonomous unmanned aircraft systems, so in our case, helicopters flying fully autonomously more than 15 years ago. Around 2003, 2004, something like that. Today I have a number of roles. For example, I'm the president of the Swedish AI Society, and I'm a member of the European Commission high-level expert group on AI, where we're currently doing work on, we published an ethical guidelines for AI a couple of weeks back, and now we're working with policy and investment recommendations for the new commission that will start this summer. I'm also part of the largest research program in Sweden called the Woldermariam AI Autonomous Systems and Software Program, WASP, which is a 10-year effort. Actually, it's going to be extended a few more years with a financing about 350 million euros for 10 years. So it's mainly funded by the Woldermariam Foundations, Knut and Alice Wallenberg Foundation, but also with funding from a large number of industries and also the universities. So the purpose of this WASP initiative is really to do the basic research today that Sweden needs in order to stay competitive in the future. So we're focusing very much on building competence. So we're going to educate more than 300, probably 400 PhDs in this area. So 3.5 years after the start, we now have 178 PhD students in the program. So we're close to halfway. We're also doing a lot of international recruitments. We're going to recruit more than 50 researchers from abroad. We have about 15 or so currently, and yeah, more is coming in. And of course, we also do a lot of collaboration with industry. I think 70 or so of the PhD students in the program so far are industrial PhD students, so they're employed by a company, but doing a PhD in one of these areas, AI, autonomous systems, or software, together with a university. So it's really about also tech transfer and knowledge transfer between academia and industry, but with a focus on basic research and future technology. And there I'm the director of the graduate school.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe we stick with the term tech transfer, because I read that in Sweden, opposed to Germany, the invention stays with the researcher or the person. It is not owned by the university or the entity he's working with. Is that true, that
yes.
Always the person is the owner of the invention?
So the individual researchers own the IP of their inventions. Usually the university has the right to use it, but the ownership is with the researcher. And then, of course, the universities have a lot of support structures to help researchers, either to kind of sell the IP or to help companies take the IP that they have created and start companies. So we do have a lot of examples of companies being spin-off companies from the universities.
And how do you explain that to the public? I mean, the universities usually are financed by tax money, so is it fair to give the IP to that person who was financed by a tax paying?
I actually don't know the background behind this lärarundantag, teachers or researchers exemption, as it's called. But I mean, what we do is that all the research that we do is publicly available. So I mean, we publish. So, I mean, publishing is of course the most important part, and that's completely open. And then of course we also want to encourage people to actually take this and start the companies, and there we've taken this approach where it's the individual researchers that should do it rather than the universities.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good approach, and I guess most researchers don't have the financial means to then do the next step, and they need the university or a private investor or a venture capitalist to really finance the startup. But it was like this in Germany some decades ago, and they changed the system. And I'm not sure whether Sweden is so successful because of that issue or not, but it seems to be kind of specific or special in Europe as well. That's my impression. And maybe, do you think that this is a speciality of Sweden that is very much appreciated and one should copy in other European countries, or do you see any problems within your clusters when it comes to IP rights?
In fact, it has been debated a lot if we should keep that system or not. Denmark changed, I think it must have been at least 10 years ago, to another system where the universities own the rights, so to speak. Sometimes I can see problems. Sometimes, if a researcher is involved in a certain project and also has some business in the same area, and if we meet another company, that I can sometimes feel that there could be some difficulties with their loyalties actually for the research in comparison towards their own company.
So how does it work in the academia? Is there a scouting, a proactive scouting of the working groups, where specialists would walk through and tell the researcher, listen, this is IP relevant, or are they all educated well enough, the researchers, the scientists, to decide on their own? Do the universities have the TTOs, the tech transfer officers, still? Because as you said, it's up to the own scientists to decide whether or not to patent or not.
Yes, I mean, the university has, I think actually, Jonas, who is here, I think you've been involved in that quite a lot. I mean, helping researchers taking the research findings and turning it into companies. We have like incubators and seed money and so on. So yes, that's a very active process.
I was working there before in that office, and I can assure that the researchers, they need support in this for sure. Yeah.
Okay, and then the second step kind of is that there is a spin-off, and then you would kind of try to support that spin-off with your cluster organization. How do you do that?
Yeah, we do that in a way because, as I told you before, we do a lot of matchmaking, as well as a startup or researcher or any kind of. So, we do take the idea and do a lot of meetings and presentations about the idea, but it's always the researchers' time and mostly time actually, because it's a big issue, because you do not have a lot of time to take the idea further, because it's maybe a paper you have to do first or something like that. So I think that as a cluster collaboration is a good way to be a part of, and maybe do some marketing for the idea and take the idea right into maybe a bigger company and do something collaborative about it. So I think that we need a lot of different areas of platforms, incubators and science parks and clusters with a lot of different companies.
So usually it's kind of a push. A researcher has a right idea, and then you as a cluster try to promote it and try to
promote
connect
it. We can do it at a breakfast seminars or any kind of that we present the idea and how it works, and maybe talk a lot about the opportunities of the idea. So I think it's a lot of you have to do a lot of communication about the idea, because they don't have the time by itself. So that's one part that we can do on Automation Region to help.
Okay, Fredrik?
So actually, I would say that our best way of doing tech and knowledge transfer in general is actually through people. Because we educate, of course, the PhD students when they finish their degree. Most of them actually go out into industry and work there. And then, of course, they take the knowledge that they have and the new insights they have developed and take it into the companies. We also do a lot of master theses together with companies, which is another great way of kind of taking the latest technology, trying it and applying it on the particular company's problems. And then, of course, in many cases, these students get hired by the company afterwards, and there you have the explicit tech and knowledge transfer. And of course, we have our normal engineering students that we educate every day. But I think through people is actually where most of that tech and knowledge transfers happens.
And as I said, it's more a push approach than, do you have a need-driven approach as well, where ABB or Siemens or all the companies all of your clusters are mentioning the whole day through, I would say, do they come up actively to you as a cluster organization or a scientist and ask, listen, I need a solution for that, or is it more that the science is pushing the global companies?
I mean, definitely we have a lot of collaboration. For example, I have a PhD student who is employed by Saab. So he's an industrial PhD student, so he's employed by the company, but doing a PhD in my group. And of course, there it's very much driven by the industry, what needs they have. But actually, we do have industry representatives also in all levels of the university. So in our engineering programs, program boards, we have industry representatives. In our research program, I mean, in the board of this VASP program, for example, I think almost half of the people on the board are from the major companies in Sweden. So yes, we definitely have a lot of interaction with industry and setting the agenda together.
I can maybe add that,
Sure.
that as a cluster, we have to some extent also worked with demand-driven and challenge-driven innovation with stakeholders. Not only the companies, but also the public authorities, like the Swedish Weather Service that I mentioned before. It's quite it's a quite early stage at this moment, but we have different ideas that we are working on actually, together with researchers as well as SMEs, I would say. Yeah.
Catarina?
But I think that we also have a responsibility to add the whole value chain for companies, small and medium-sized companies, to have a relationship with the researcher on new technology, so we could add the whole value chain and to be a part of the digital transformation. So we do make a lot of matchmaking events, not only for the big, as you ABB and Siemens, because that's obvious. We have to make more new technology, new solutions available for small and medium-sized enterprise.
Okay, talking about value chain or picking that word or sentence kind of, Tsion, in Germany at least, IoT, we see that especially the small and medium-sized enterprises are struggling with this kind of modernized value chain creation of products. And what is going on in the Swedish cluster when it comes to really changing a business model, which obviously, as we saw today by SkyMaker or Dynamaker, is very useful, I would say. But usually, at least in Germany, I see that all of those SMEs are very much struggling with the kind of renewing themselves very fundamentally. And do you see this as well in your cluster?
Well, in our cluster, we mainly focus on taking existing technology within IoT and implementing it in public agencies that we see are, they haven't really moved as far as the technology has in their digital journey. So the aim is really to identify, and it's kind of back to what we were discussing before, going on demand, and identifying the demands or the needs that we see in our need owners, which are the police, for example, and the public transport, and defining what the needs can be and how the technology that exists today can help solve those problems.
Okay, so you're more an innovation agency for the public authorities.
Yeah, that's mainly the focus for the project or financed by Vinnova.
Okay, so and then you're scouting the SMEs in the region for their products and their services that could be incorporated in the public authorities.
Yeah, part of the companies or the members are already there, already exist, but some of the technological needs that exist we don't really have it within our cluster, so then we see the need to introduce some other partners into that. Yeah. I'm not sure if I answered your question.
Yeah. I understand that it's more public authority driven. And I didn't know that. Thank you. And Fredrik, what I'm always interested in AI is, what do you think is the clue of that technology? Is it the feeding of the data at the beginning, or is it the processing of the data? Because if you put only shitty data in, the AI would be very useless, I guess. And how do you manage, or how do you evaluate the data for a good AI?
So of course, data is one important part for modern AI applications, but I'm not sure that's always the biggest hurdle for many companies, because actually many companies and organizations have access to the data. The challenge could also equally well be in how do we integrate it into our processes or products or services. That it's very easy to kind of set up, here we have some kind of AI tool, but we don't really know how to integrate it into our business. And then we have this risk of kind of just you do your proof of concept or pilot, but it never gets implemented and integrated in your normal business. So actually, I think in some sense that's an equally large challenge compared to this data aspect. When it comes to data, I think the challenge there, I mean, of course, you have the problem with low quality data. Usually it's a lack of metadata, so you don't really know where did it come from, what does it really mean. You just have the data itself and don't know how to use it. But the second thing is that usually you need to combine data from multiple sources to really make a difference. And for example, that can be a challenge if you have, for example, a larger organization which the organization doesn't share the data between different parts of the company. So it is how do you make data available to other parts of your organization? And of course, if you need to share data or make data available between organizations, between companies, that also, of course, is a hurdle. So data is one aspect, but I think there are others. And of course, we also have the competence issue, that there is a severe lack of competence in the area, which makes it harder to make progress. But I do think there is a lot of potential, as we heard the minister say here right before that. I also fully believe that AI will change every part of our society and every industry and sector in different ways. It's a real general purpose technology.
But sticking with data again, is it that only the big global companies are profiting from AI because they own the vast amount of data and SMEs will get kind of problems or get lost? Or do you see there are chances even for the small and medium-sized companies to use AI to their profitability?
So actually, I will partly challenge that statement. I mean, the big company now, I guess you're talking about Facebook, Google, Amazon, and so on.
Sure.
The type of data that they have is very much around individuals and our digital interactions. But if we're looking at the European level, actually, Europe, well, it's a fact we are not very large in that particular sector to this business to consumer. But the sector where we are very big, for example, business to business, where we have a lot of, both machine-generated data, talking about IoT and so on, but also kind of more process industry data and other types of non-personal data. There, I think actually Europe and the European companies have an advantage, or at least have as much access to that type of data as these other companies. What we also see is that if you are a company which can provide a certain particular data source, then that can be your value in itself, which means that if you have a smaller company which can provide a certain type of data, that can actually be a business opportunity for you. And of course, then you need to interact in a larger ecosystem to really kind of get the value out of that. But I don't see that will be necessary so that smaller, medium-sized companies will not have a chance. But they have to find a place in the ecosystem. So actually, I think that is also a very important aspect, that you as an individual company might not have that great opportunity, but if you find a place in a larger ecosystem where you can collaborate with others, then you will have a much better chance. And there you also have the chance of actually kind of focusing your activities on a smaller part where you can really excel.
Okay. So if there are any questions from the audience, please raise your hand. And not yet. So maybe because we're talking about emerging technologies and AI obviously is I guess the newest one, and all of those technologies have the potential of kind of at least competing with human decision making, and that's what also the minister was talking about, that we are emotionally driven individuals, and maybe AI or other processes, digital processes might help mankind to make good decisions. But in your industry field, maybe you could talk about where you see that the limits are of your emergent technology, where still the human decision making, and I guess, for instance, in AI, it's still that the decision making as such has to be done by human. Whereas in automation, I guess, there are, as we saw this Volvo truck without a driver, there are already parts of the industry that are totally without humans, workable or profitable. So maybe you could...
So I mean, I would like to first state, I mean, just as the minister said, it's not a question of either or. So I mean, it's really not either AI-based or AI-driven or human-based. It's actually how can combine AI and humans together. So I mean, it's this quote that I don't believe that medical doctors will be outcompeted by AI, but rather those doctors that don't use AI will be lose out against those doctors that use AI. So it really be that those that are able to use AI as an effective tool, they will be the most effective. So I really think that's an important part. And I mean, I also think that we will improve the way that humans make decisions by being able to study decision making from a more kind of objective perspective, because we know that human decision making has a lot of bias in it. But if we can study it and detect this and alleviate that, we will improve our human decision-making processes as well. So actually, I think the kind of fully autonomous cases will be relatively rare, but most cases will have a combination of humans and AI making the decisions.
I can add a little bit to that, because when it comes to the interaction between the machines and the human, there we have visualization, and it's very important actually to really find the proper way of interaction where the human can communicate his or her decisions and the machine can communicate back. Actually, we have a large project started within Visual Sweden. It's called Augmented Intelligence. It's very much about this interface. It's very important. It's crucial actually for success, I would say.
And in your cluster automation, is it kind of a problem or a topic for the cluster members to get rid of the humans because automation will do the deal?
Yeah. When we started about 12 years ago, the issue was always about, are you working with take away all my work in my branch? But no, it's not the case anymore, because I think that people, as Fredrik told you here before, I think that many people are aware of the technology's opportunities for me to have a different, because everyone is going to be in some kind of affected about the new technology and so on, but I think that it's mostly in the most positive way, because you work in a different way, you work with different things, and that's the big issue, and the big question is what is that going to be. So the discussion in the cluster right now, it's a lot of the new way of working and the new way of working today to meet the future tomorrow. So what we have to do today to lifelong learning about new technologies, absorbing new way of thinking about the technology as a tool for me to be better at my work, everyday work. So it's competences and lifelong learning had never been as in the field that I work today as a big question as today, actually.
So neither of you has problems with the broad public saying, no, we don't want this emerging technology. We are more or less fine with the actual situation, and I'm more afraid of losing my job than seeing the benefits of that technology. You don't have to communicate it to the broader public or to the public authority that you are serving for.
Well, I think that when it comes to Internet of Things and connecting devices to the cloud, there's the question of integrity that comes up, and people might be afraid of sending too much data up into a cloud that might be used by or come into the wrong hands in the end. But I do think that the benefits of the technology outweighs the risks, and always being aware of the risks is also incredibly important, and becomes increasingly important the more connected we are. So there is a fear of it, but I think that being aware and being agile in the process of improving it is, or at least it creates some comfort, or because everybody's connected today, and although we know that data is being collected about us, we're kind of accepting it because we are enjoying the benefits of it. So. Yeah.
And so that's the Swedish public opinion as well, or is it the cluster opinion?
I think
because in Germany, for instance, we do have a lot of people who are reluctant to sharing of data, or sharing public data, or sharing data in public.
Yeah.
So I'm very astonished to hear that obviously in Sweden there are no problems with emergent technologies and future applications.
I think we're quite a trusting people.
Very special.
But I mean, I would say, of course, there is uncertainty and in some sense fear among parts of the population. I mean, my view on that, I mean, experience is actually that's probably more due to other things. But so, for example, the experience decrease in the welfare provided, for example, and because we do see that large parts of the country is losing a lot of its population, which means that they don't really have either the people nor the resources to provide the level of welfare that people feel entitled to and are used to. Mm-hmm. And so actually, I think it's probably more a result of that than the technology itself. However, it's of course extremely important both to be clear to how can this benefit everyone, but also actually making sure that it happens. Because it's easy to say, yes, everyone will benefit from increased growth, but if that growth and welfare is only in the large cities, for example, then of course that part of the population who's not living there will not experience this positive development. So it's really important to actually make sure that it gets spread across the countries. Actually, I mean, I think in some sense we don't really have a productivity problem, we have a distribution problem. That in some sense it's unevenly distributed, and can we improve the distribution, then that kind of fear will go away. And actually I think AI will be a major part of the solution, because if you're looking at this more rural areas of Sweden, they of course have a major challenge in recruiting competent teachers or nurses and doctors and so on, that it's actually a lack of people. It's not that they're redundant people. And I think that if we don't kind of use the human resources that we have much more efficiently, and of course other resources as well, then they will lose out in some sense even more. So it's really important that we, in this public sector, I really think that the public sector will be key. Because if we can manage to use this technology to improve the level of public services provided to everyone in the country, then the technology will be seen as something positive. Otherwise, of course, there's always the risk of backlash, as has been mentioned earlier.
So again, are there questions? Maria?
I would like to ask a question to Tsion. I'm curious as to why there is a cluster on IoT for societal improvement. Out of all the emerging technologies, why IoT? Or maybe there are others as well. This is quite new for me.
Yeah.
I think it's extremely interesting, but I'm just curious as to why IoT and not big data, not some of the technologies within AI. Why?
Well, Vinnova has created strategic innovation programs that are located in different regions or that have different areas of focus. And one of those is IoT for specifically societal implications. And IoT World is one of 13 hubs in Sweden that have this focus. So the Vinnova project is specifically focusing on using IoT to become world leading in the societal area, I would say.
There's another question in the back.
So that's a great question, Matthias. So I mean, I do actually think that's one of the major challenges, actually. And that's why I'm so happy that the European Union has taken this approach that the purpose of AI in Europe is, first of all, that it should be human-centered, but also that it should be trustworthy. And the whole point of developing these ethical guidelines that we have developed is so that we as citizens and consumers and people in general can trust the technology. Because I actually think trust is the key here. And we probably are in some kind of tipping point. I mean, it seems like currently people are starting to lose trust in a lot of these systems. And if we don't manage to regain that trust, then people will really start to backlash and kind of make, some sense, revolt against the technology. But if we can regain the trust and show that we are doing the very best that we can, we know that there will be mistakes from time to time, but then we will have a mechanism for redress. And that we will be able to detect this and do something about it so that it will hopefully not happen again. And then we can rebuild the trust, and if we just make people trust the system, we will have a much easier time rolling it out, especially in the public sector. Their trust is everything. So yes, it's a very important question. These ethical guidelines is one approach, but and actually I want to say one thing, that we have then defined trustworthy AI as AI that is lawful, so it follows the law, which is actually a problem in some cases. That should also be ethical, so we have 4 ethical principles, for example, and that it should be robust, which means that you can have the best intentions in the world, but if you don't implement your system in a robust, secure manner, it's not worth very much. So actually the quality of the implementation is as important as being ethical and lawful, which I think is actually quite different compared to what many others are doing. And if we manage to achieve all these 3, then you truly have trustworthy AI.
Okay, I'm thinking about Boeing now. So, Lena, there was another question.
Yes, about what you're talking, and tech with a purpose as this theme. Could you elaborate a little bit about how you, as clusters and areas of innovation, try to target the global goals and what you do in terms of activities to support good development to make a better world?
Again, I'm going to say visualization, because it's obvious, of course. The sustainable global goals are very suitable for visualization in order to give insight, to give examples of what you can do in order to work towards them. Actually, we have established a platform. It's called Visual Agenda 2030, very much based on, of course, the global goals. I hope that you will see more of that in the future. It's just started the development, and we will do a lot. And of course, we will use it also by ourselves in our own development, for sure. Yeah.
How do automation region make the world better? I think that automation as an area of strength has a big opportunity, of course. We're talking about Agenda 2030. It's, of course, a work that we do a lot in the organization, but also in any collaborations. So when we do every week, we have incoming questions about collaborations to the organization, and we always have some kind of criteria for every collaboration? Is this helping, not maybe save the world or make it a better place, but we have questions that address any kind of collaboration. If anything is, in the gray zone or not spot on, we don't collaborate and we don't do the project. So everything is going to move forward for environment and the global goals, actually. So.
It's within the cluster is very different depending on which project it's concerning. So each project that's initiated has its own global goal that it focuses on. But then on a cluster management level, we've kind of been engaged in the equality between sexes goal, where one example is that we started a project together with students where we identified, or we're all facing the challenge within tech, in the tech sector of not having enough women in the sector today, and also not enough women who are studying to become something within tech. So we know that it's not something that's going to be solved in the near future, and therefore we wanted to create something that could inspire and keep the interest on, in a younger age, specifically targeted towards girls, but also boys, or not the stereotypical tech person, I guess. So what we're doing together with these students is we're designing a lab bag with different IoT functions that you can take to schools and show to students in the age where they usually lose interest for tech. But the purpose for this bag is also that it should be able to be used at companies who want to implement something that is IoT related, but the people who will use the technology are not very knowledgeable within the field. So for them to also become interested and not fear the technology. And by doing that, we think that we'll be able to generate equality somehow. So that's just one example. But I think there's still a lot more that we can do.
Yeah, and of course, since I believe that AI will influence everything, of course, I think that AI will be a major part of solving all of it, addressing all of these challenges, because it's all about how to do more with less. So, how to use resources much more efficiently, whether it's reducing food waste or reducing emissions or reducing pollution and so on. So I definitely think that's a major part. And then on a kind of personal level, I've also been involved with the Swedish climate research program, so that we are in discussions about maybe setting up a joint program on using AI explicitly for addressing climate change questions. So it's part of the Swedish research funding agencies to support that.
Global climate and Swedish clusters, perfectly workable and functional clusters. How many international corporations have you in your cluster? It sounds very perfect in the Swedish environment, and obviously there are specialities to Sweden and your clusters and your way of tech transfer, but how important in your cluster organization is the international cooperation with other clusters or other companies, SMEs especially?
Yeah, for sure, it will be increasingly important. We have some cooperation with a cluster in Germany, in Stuttgart, called Virtual Dimension Center, of similar kind as us, but also slightly different. They have been around for quite many years. We will continue to cooperate for sure, but we will also try to find other relations with leading clusters in our own field, but also other clusters. Since we work with industrial applications as well as societal and medical applications, there are great opportunities actually for cooperation, and we really need that. Next year, we will host the European conferences in computer graphics and visualization. The two major conferences we will host in our region, and that will be, I think, one opportunity for increasing cooperation. And also this event, you are all welcome to discuss cooperation with me when it comes to visualization and image analysis in all applications, I would say. Okay.
We call it the internationalization challenge for us, because we have startups, we have small, medium-sized companies, but we also have ABB, Siemens, so on. And we work in the field about researchers, companies, and we do have to collaborate in different ways, because everyone doesn't have the same need in international collaboration. So we do have at the Hannover Messe for last month, it's the world largest fair for the industry. We had an automation pavilion, and it was a great success actually, because Sweden was the partner country, and have an own hotspot for innovation and collaboration at this big arena was a great success actually. But we do have it have to do it in a different way, and we do have to work with other incubators and science parks in different parts of Europe. But we also do have to work with arenas as clusters, as Anders told you, to make the matchmaking, to be the broker for not just a handshake. We have to work hard for business, actually business. So we do it, and we call it the internationalization challenge. But we work hard on it, and I think that we have a lot of good collaborations around the world right now.
Yeah. As of today, the cluster does not have any international collaborations. We're quite a young cluster. We've almost been active for a year. But we do see that it's going to be important in the future, as on the global scale, we're very small, and we will need to collaborate with other countries and companies in other regions, especially if we want to be world leading. So one of the activities that we did recently in order to initiate that was going to Hannover Messe and attending a matchmaking with other clusters, German clusters there. Mm-hmm. And we want to continue those types of activities with the cluster.
And I would say, especially for public authorities or city administrations, there is a tight network of all the cities, global cities that are connected very tightly. So I guess, especially for you, it should be quite easy to internationalize and do those cooperations on an international basis. Hopefully. Maybe you want to finish our session?
So, of course, international collaboration is essential for research. So when you take this VASP program, for example, we do have agreements with Stanford, Berkeley, and Nanyang Technological University in Singapore, where we send our PhD students to these universities as part of their PhD studies. We are also organizing international study trips every year. So I took 65 PhD students to Zurich and Munich one year, and then to California one year. Last year we were in Barcelona and Toulouse, and this year we're going to Singapore with half the group, and the other half group will go to Germany. So we're really focusing on building this international collaboration. On the kind of national AI level, Sweden is currently building up a number of collaborations with other countries. So we were in India 3 weeks ago with a large delegation to set up collaborations with the largest democracy on the planet on AI. We're going to Switzerland in a few months. We had a delegation in Canada, and of course we have collaborations already with Germany and France. So we had Cédric Villani visiting Gothenburg a few weeks ago, and so on. So there's a lot of international collaboration kind of getting started, and of course we want to build on this as much as we can to both provide our expertise but also learn from the rest of the world.
Okay. So thank you very much. As you all heard, you are invited to collaborate and to get into contact with the clusters or the science in the university. And thank you for sharing your expertise and letting us know what you are doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.